Good day, everybody. Next session is done by Divya Swarnkar. And Divya's session certainly will be an interesting one. Divya Swarnkar is working for close to 14 years at Microsoft. And currently, she is a program manager in Azure Logic Apps, where she's focusing on driving enterprise integration scenarios, such as SAP and EDI. Her talk today will be about integration in industry verticals. And it's over to you, Divya.
Thank you, Lex, and good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you are. I'm really excited to be back here and talking about enterprise integration and specifically integration in industry verticals this time. And if you're wondering why this session, well, it's slightly different than all the sessions we've had so far. You've seen multiple sessions since yesterday, multiple demos since yesterday that have been showcasing all the awesome work that has been happening and that is on the roadmap to enable companies, to enable developers to build cloud native application. This session is a slightly different pivot on the work that we are doing, where we want to focus not just on the capabilities, but how do we see the application of all the great work that is happening around in the different industry verticals. So I will be talking about 3 industry verticals, and I chose these because of the disruptions, because of the innovations that are happening in each of these areas. Also, each of these areas are multi-billion markets and are embracing cloud technologies faster than ever. From our side, these are also the areas where our offering is somewhat in early stages. And hence, we are planning to make more investments. And so timing wise, this is a great time to engage with you, to get your feedback, as always, to make sure that we are building the right capabilities and right solutions for our customers. So healthcare is a top priority right now and probably on everyone's mind. And therefore, I want to start with this vertical and share the work that we've done and our plans for the future. HL7 is a very commonly used electronic data standard that is used for exchanging healthcare messages, like patient information or their medical reports or billing data and so on. As of now, we do not have native support for processing HL7, or we've not endorsed any solutions out there to do the same. So today I want to showcase the work Microsoft Healthcare team has done in partnership with us to enable the ingestion of HL7 messages over MLLP or HTTPS, and then process and convert the HL7 flat file messages to FHIR messages. FHIR is another more modern industry standard used in healthcare, which is interoperable across several systems. So before we jump, let's jump into the demo. And before we do that, I just want to showcase the demo through a use case, which is a case study around a clinical trial for the drug for diabetes. And using the applications that we have built with Logic Apps, we are going to allow potential candidates to submit their interest, and if they are registered with the diabetic conditions and meet certain criteria, then they are chosen for the study. And all of the data while gets handled and processed by Logic Apps, we also use Power BI to do visual analytics on the data and share that with the appropriate study team and stakeholders to make decisions. This demo is largely built by healthcare team, Microsoft Healthcare team, and it is available on their GitHub repo, which I'll share later in the session. So I do want to take a moment here and acknowledge and thank the healthcare team who have worked closely with me on this. For this demo, I'm also choosing the multi-tenant or the consumption offering of the Logic Apps. So with that, I will move on to the demo. So let's start with the workflow here. All right, what's going on here? My screen is frozen. I don't know why. Okay, yeah. So what I have here is a workflow that is that has a trigger that is receiving messages over a service bus queue. And the reason we've chosen service bus queue here is because in healthcare industry, there is a hard requirement for sequential processing of the messages of the patient data. After receiving the message, we are pulling the content of the message from the blob. So what we have in service bus is the metadata about the message, but the actual content is in the blob. And this is and the reason I've written the workflow here in this way is because in the healthcare industry, again, the messages can be very large in size because of the images that are typically in a part of the message, and hence instead of putting the message in the service bus, we are putting it in the blob and using the blob content link to process the message. Now the next step here is the key component, the key thing that I want to highlight in this demo, which is the converter, the HL7 converter that we have, that the healthcare team has built in collaboration with us. So this is a custom connector that it is available on GitHub. It is open source. And the way it works is that it basically evaluates or processes the handlebar templates, and using the templating rules, using the templates, using the rules defined in the map, it converts the HL7 message to the FHIR message. And once that is done, then I use an Azure function here to basically do some additional processing on the message and save the message onto the FHIR server and push it into an event hub for further processing. So a couple of things that I want to highlight here. The first one, as I mentioned, this is a custom connector available out there. It works on handlebar templates. So the map here, or the template here, is basically a handlebar template that defines the rules for the conversion. It is a custom connector. The second thing that I'm using here is an Azure function. One of my goals in this session is to also cover some of the patterns and practices that we often discuss with the customers, that we often recommend to the customers. So here I'm using, for this end-to-end scenarios, I have multiple workflows, multiple logic apps. Instead of creating a monolithic logic app, what I have done is created self-composed, created smaller units of workflows, which make logical sense from the business point of view. The other thing is we are using custom connectors functions, which we consider as part of in our offering, and which we consider as an extension points for our platform. So where the platform does not meet your needs, or where you have complex scenarios which need writing additional code, doing additional processing, it is completely fine, and we do recommend customers to evaluate and explore these options that we provide to extend the platform capabilities that Logic App offers. Now, the next step after the data is persisted in FHIR server is to do some additional processing on the data for the study. So the next steps, there is nothing new here. I'm just reading the data from the event hub. If this is a medical record update, then based on the metadata, I'm loading more information about the patient from the FHIR server. And if it's a patient who has diabetes diagnosis, then we are, based on some analysis, we are pushing the data into SQL. The SQL, the reason we are pushing the data into SQL here is to power the Power BI dashboard and be able to do analytics on the data. And then finally, we have a Teams connector here where we are posting all the potential candidates information to a Teams channel, so the team that is doing the study can look into it and evaluate. So with that, let's trigger a run for this. So here is the HL7 flat file message I have that I'm going to send to the workflow. And it was successfully received. Let's go to the execution of this logic app. And here we have the run. I think I'll want to highlight the new piece here, which is the converter, which basically takes in the flat file and based on the template that was chosen, it converts the XML, the flat file into FHIR, which is based on JSON. So this is what we have for HL7 conversion. And if we'll go to the dashboard, all the data that was pushed into SQL now powers this Power BI dashboard, which then the stakeholders can use to see the distribution of the applicants, based on gender or based on several other criteria, which the research team is going to use to make the determination whether the candidate is fit for the study or not. So with that, let's move back to the slides. All right. So the key takeaways that I want for you to take away from this demo is the first one, as I mentioned, is the HL7 converter that we are introducing today. It is open source. It is available on GitHub. This is something that we usually have not done, right? Like we've not provided any capability as an open source connector. So definitely looking for your feedback and your thoughts on this. Is this something that you would use? Are there any challenges in doing so? From our side, in terms of next steps, we are considering in building this capability natively in the platform itself. But we wanted to go out there with this open source connector so that we can get early feedback from the customers. More importantly, the templates are also open source, and the whole idea is that we want to see if there is an appetite for the community, for the customers to own and manage these templates, to contribute to more to these templates and grow them. So again, looking for your feedback on and your thoughts around that. And as I mentioned, we do a lot of times we work with customers and we do recommend them functions and custom connectors as a mechanism to extend the capabilities of the platform as needed by their business scenarios. With that, let's move on to the second vertical. So the next vertical that I want to talk about is IoT Edge. And the reason I chose this is because Gartner calls out edge computing as one of the top technology trends in 2020. And they predict that by 2023, there would be as many as 20 times smart devices at the edge of the network. So this is definitely an area where a lot of innovation is happening and is going to happen in the next couple of years. In the session that we had yesterday, especially in Matt's session, you have seen the new and private release of Logic Apps that allows you to build and run applications anywhere because of by using containers, and that actually includes IoT edge devices as well. For this scenario, however, things are a bit early on and are not yet on the finish line. So what I'm going to show you is also somewhat rough in that sense. So I request you to look at that with a bit open and forward-looking mindset, and then you can see the awesome potential and opportunities that the new offering of Logic Apps provides and especially opens up for the edge development scenarios. So for the demo purposes, I am going to demo Event Grid, which already has a module for Edge along with Logic Apps everywhere. And the reason I chose Event Grid is because one, it already supports Edge, but Event Grid, if you can do integration with Event Grid and Logic Apps, you basically write any kind of Edge applications, because Event Grid, as a source, Event Grid can use blob storage, but also any custom source that has an ability to post to act as a publisher through an HTTP endpoint. So this is not just limited to Microsoft stack. As long as you can put this stuff in containers, you can take Event Grid and Logic Apps everywhere. For the demo purposes, I am taking up a use case so that it's easier to understand what I'm trying to show here, where consider a retail store which has sensors in their shelves, and the sensors basically send real-time data about the inventory in stock, and based on that we are going to make a decision whether a shelf needs to be restocked or not. In this demo where I'm going to show you the integration, I will show you a Logic app that basically subscribes to the Event Grid on Edge via a webhook, and then it receives the events, these restocking events, every time the publisher on the Edge pushes an event on the Event Grid topic. So with that, let's move on to the demo. And I do have to log into the Edge device here. Right. All right, so before I come here, a second, I need to move to another screen actually. Nope. I am sorry, I'm using Zoom for the first time here. So in order to do this demo, what we've done is I've created a VM, which is basically my Edge device here, and I have registered the VM to the IoT hub for the device management and for the communication across the different Edge modules. So this is my device, and as you can see, I have different Edge modules that are running here: Event Grid, Publisher, and an Event Hub, Publisher, and a subscriber. Now with that, let's move to the demo machine here. So this is my Edge VM, and on this Edge VM, let's again check that all the modules are running. So this is again on my Edge VM. I have all the modules that I was showing you in the Event Hub, and they are running here. We are using the new Logic Apps here, and what I have here, when I'm running the Logic app, what I get is the callback URL for this workflow. This workflow is running on the Edge device, and so I have the localhost callback URL for this, which I am going to use in my IoT Edge as a subscriber. And basically, as I publish the events, one of the subscriber here is going to be the webhook, which is going to receive the events. In terms of processing, let's look at what the Logic app here is doing. It's a very simple workflow. which basically receives the IoT edge requests here and takes a look at the inventory, and if the inventory item, whatever the event is for certain items, and if the item is less than a certain threshold, then we want to do something. This I've just used a compose here, but the whole idea is that you can do anything here, right? You can call any other edge module that is on the device. You could call, for example, a SQL edge module and store and update the inventory, or you could even call something that is on your on-prem system like SAP to invent the update to update the inventory. So there are some customers who I've talked to, they have mentioned that for IoT edge scenarios, they want to do all the bulk of the processing, of course, on the edge device to save on the network and bandwidth, but they also want to connect to the internet and send email or send notification out in the cloud when an event of interest happens. So here you could be doing that as well, where in the true case here, you could use any connector out of all the 300 plus connectors we have and create your workflows. Now, for the purposes of this demo, I'm using a stateful logic app here because I want to show you the execution and what happens at each step. But this is one of the use case. This is one of the scenario where stateless logic apps fit completely, are very suitable because these are high volume, high traffic and scenarios which with low latency requirements. Also, it's probably not critical for an IoT edge scenario to have checkpoints or to persist inputs and outputs from each step at every point. So as you're trying out the private preview of logic apps, as you're building edge applications, stateless workflows are what would have a great fit here. Now, let's go to the Cloud Shell here, which is closed. I have to do this right now because the Cloud Shell session closes in 20 minutes, and hence you have to do it live. So what I want to show here is the event that we are sending to the event grid, which will be processed by the workflow. So I'm using the event grid schema here and basically sending an event where the data that I have here is basically an item on the shelf, its code, and its quantity. Most of the times, if the quantity as I have in my workflow it's higher than the threshold, then no action will be required. But when it's lower than the threshold, then we do something in our logic apps to process that. Let's look at the subscriber. So in terms of subscription, what we are subscribing, we have a webhook that is being subscribed here to the event grid, and the endpoint URI is the URI of my workflow that is running on my edge device. So with that, let's publish the event. So we are publishing the event to the topic that I have already created for the event grid, and it was published successfully. So with that, I would like to move to the workflow, and as you can see, the event has been received by this logic app, and let's refresh the latest run and see the run here. So if you look at the workflows, it's again simple. we received the request. The request has the same payload that I was showing you. And because it is lower than the threshold, the true block was executed. And again, in the true block, you have the flexibility to do any kind of further processing that you want to do for this. One of the things that I do want to mention is, I think it probably Matt or Derek, they've covered in their session yesterday, that you have an ability with logic apps everywhere that you can deploy them to Docker containers. So once with that, you will have all the capability wherever you can deploy the Docker containers on any edge device. You now have an ability to do integration, to do communication across the Dockers on the edge devices. And using Event Grid, you can further facilitate that communication and make event-driven applications with IoT Edge. The other thing that I want to mention here is that as I was recommending to use stateless workflows for this case, one of the things that is on the roadmap and will be coming soon is the integration of app insights. Once we have that ability, then even if you are using stateless workflows, you still get all the telemetry of the events. So that App Insights Act basically gives you the telemetry and real-time data on what events are being received, what kind of traffic, what kind of volume is being handled by these workflows. So it's not like you're completely in dark. The telemetry is still going to be available for you, but you still, through stateless, you still get low latency workflows that is needed to build edge applications. Let's see, did I cover everything here? I think so. All right, so with that, let's move back to the PowerPoint. All right, so what are the key things to take from this demo? The first one, which we've already been seeing since yesterday, is the availability of logic apps to run in containers, and with that, the ability to run stateless workflows. Both of these, which are in private preview, but they unlock a lot of potential when it comes to building IoT edge applications. And this is, I think, very exciting and kind of a game. I consider it as a game changer, because if you look out today, there are no offerings out there which provide a low-code development and integration capabilities for edge. So with new logic apps, you can use your same familiar technologies, same familiar tools, and without much work, you can build these low-code applications targeted for edge. As I mentioned, in order to do these, some of the things that you will need is integration with App Insights, which will be coming soon. The other thing that we are working on right now, what I've shown you, I was running everything device itself, but clearly we will, because we do not have the edge module yet for logic apps. So that is something that will be coming in the future, where you will find more first-class development and integration capabilities for edge scenarios. And lastly, while we with the new logic apps, we have a lot of built-in connectors, and the goal is to provide more built-in connectors so that you can run these. You can take advantage of all the compute and the world of lesser limits more and more, and that does include EDI connectors as well. All right. So with that, let's talk about the third vertical here, which is financial payments. And when it comes to financial payments, SWIFT is a global and leading provider for secure financial messaging, and it's being used across more than 200 countries and across more than 11,000 institutions. So the way it works today is that the enterprises and banks who want to participate and do these transactions over Swift network, they leverage the on-prem installations of the Swift technologies. But this is slowly changing as more and more fintechs are becoming major players in this space, and they are bringing and they are pushing to bring more and more disruptive technologies, which provides them that agility to make innovations and make changes faster in this space. So Swift and Microsoft have been collaborating for a while on a project to bring all the Swift capabilities into Azure. And by hosting Swift on Azure, on cloud, instead of having every financial institution do that and have a footprint and have an on-prem footprint that they need to manage, they need to maintain, it reduces a lot of overhead for them and provides them the speed, consistency, and the security that is required for these kind of payment processing. I'm going to jump into the demo, but for this demo, I am going to use integration service environment, which is the dedicated offering of Logic Apps, and provides you an ability to run both the platform and the connectors into your own VNet in a completely isolated manner. And what I want to showcase is the Swift connector that we have released, which is in private preview, which enables handling of the flat file, Swift flat file, which is an empty format, and Swift XML, which is MX format messages. And again, from use case point of view, consider Fabricam Treasury, who's want to do a payment transaction, which is usually worth millions to close a recent business acquisition. So with that, I will move on to the demo. And let's go back. So here is my workflow. Here is my Logic app. It is created and it is running in the ICE in integration service environment. So every connector that I'm using here is basically running these in a very secure and in a very isolated environment. For those who are familiar with Logic apps and for those who have been using SAP, if you're wondering about SAP connector, yes, it is running in ICE. We have released SAP connector for ICE last week. So now you have an ability to use SAP connector in ICE. And what that means is that since SAP connector and since ICE and your SAP on-prem systems are either in the same VNet or are peered together, you have an ability to reach out to your SAP system without going through the gateway. And that is I think that is a huge deal. That is a big requirement for a lot of enterprises. Because gateway brings the overhead of managing and maintaining VMs in your ecosystem, but also because of some of the bottlenecks that gateway has in terms of the volume of message processing as well as the size of the messages. So with gateway not in the picture, you have the flexibility, you have the option to expand that. And as you can see, if I look at the connection, it does not use any gateway here. So the rest of the experience remains same, except that you do not have to go through the gateway setup and use that. In the next step, what I have here is once the message is received from the SAP to do the request for fund transfer, that is in the SAP XML format. So we are going to convert the SAP XML into the Swift XML format. And to do that, I am using a map here. The map is uploaded in the integration account. So this logic app is associated with an integration account, which has all the artifacts required to do the processing, including the map for this stage. Once I also have an additional step here to convert the XML that I'm receiving from SAP into JSON format, just so that just because JSON is the native language for logic apps, it just makes handling some of the data easier. I can just use the token picker in the designer and basically use the properties or metadata from the message and promote them for business tracking. So in the next step is I wanted to promote some of the data as well as augment or extend the data that I have with a tracking ID, so that these messages which are super critical, we have an ability to do tracking on them. In the other thing that I'm doing here is in order to promote these properties, I also want to send the data to Log Analytics, which is our monitoring solution. And to do that, I'm using the tracked properties here, which basically allows you to extend the default event that we push into Log Analytics with your own custom data. So the tracking information relevant for this business message is being pushed to Log Analytics as well. Here is the key component of this workflow, which is the Swift encoder. So the Swift connector includes both encoder and decoder. And here we are basically converting the XML that we received into the flat file using into the flat file. And this is done using the schemas that are being uploaded to the integration account. The encoder basically does the automatic resolution of the schema and converts the message and validates the message against the schema that has been uploaded to the integration account. Once this step is complete, then I have two branches here. One is my failure path, and the other one on the right is my success path. And the way I'm doing it is that if the message processing is successful, then I'm sending it to a dispatcher queue, where I have another logic app which basically picks this and then sends it to the Swift network. Since typically Swift transactions and transactions in this use case where we are considering a treasury scenario, these are scenarios where it's kind of all hands on the deck. So we have these workflows usually have a lot of notification capabilities in them, so that the operations team is constantly aware of what is going on with the processing of the messages, which is why I have two steps, both in the successful path and the failure path, on notifying the operations with the status of the processing of the messages. Now let's look at what happens when we execute this workflow. Since this is running on ICE, I will not be able to show the execution on here because of the VNet constraints. So let me move back to my VM. All right. And yes, so I am going to just look at one of the recent runs where the message was triggered from the all right. Looks like something is off here. Let's do a refresh and see. Oops, okay. I'm not on my VM. Let me make sure I'm on the VM. All right. So let's look at the workflow here. We are using SAP Connector, which is where we receive the IDOC from SAP system for the message, which is to request the fund transfer. The IDOC that we received is then converted into the Swift XML. And once the XML is converted, then I have a step to convert that XML to JSON, and based on the JSON schema. And in the next step, I have those properties being promoted to log analytics. Something that I forgot to mention is that a lot of times we do recommend using Liquid for XML to JSON conversion, but that is not the only option that you have. As a platform, you have the capability to convert through the built-in functions. You can simply convert XML to JSON or vice versa if the scenario is simple or if it meets your needs. So that's what I did here. And then let's look at the Swift encoding, where you pass in the XML message to Swift and we get the encoded flat file for the Swift message. And of course, because it was successfully encoded, the right path, which is the successful path, was executed here. So that's all I have here. I do want to quickly go back here, and if I can open and I quickly want to show you the business properties that we pushed into log analytics. You can look at them, you can track them from the log analytics dashboard that we have for Logic Apps. So this was my workflow. And you have all the tracking information here for the workflow, along with the properties that we added in the Logic app itself. So this can be then used by the operations team to do further tracking of the messages. All right. With that, let's move back to our slides. All right. So again, in terms of the key takeaways that I want to highlight is the availability of Swift integration, and it is in private preview. So if you are interested, if you have a scenario for Swift, do sign up for it. Even if you don't need it right away, I would love to hear from you, because we are in early stages. And as I mentioned, we plan to do more investments in this space. But it would be great if we can prioritize those investments based on the customer asks. As I mentioned, as I showed, that we now have SAP Connector for ICE in GA available, which allows you to connect directly to your on-prem SAP systems without the need of establishing the gateways. We have more Swift capabilities in the pipeline. So as I mentioned, please reach out to us, give your feedback. Even if you don't need it right now, do engage with us. And I am pretty sure I will get a question on EIP tools for today. The toolset is available for VS 2015, and it is a painful experience. We acknowledge that. Our hope was actually to have these tools available by this time for you, but it didn't happen for various reasons. But just want to assure you that this is one of the high priority items for us, and it should come soon. So in terms of closing thoughts, what I have tried here is to cover different industry verticals and map them also to different offerings we have, from consumption logic apps to dedicated logic apps or ICE or logic apps in containers. And each of these offerings are very different in their own way and have a place in different verticals for different scenarios. With logic apps everywhere, we also are going one step further by providing you the option to write stateless workflows, which will have application in a lot of scenarios, especially the ones which are like IoT Edge, which require very low latency. I have demonstrated in terms of new capabilities, HL7 connector and Swift connector, and would love to get your feedback on our approach for HL7 connector. And if you're interested in signing up for a Swift connector, please reach out to me or reach out to us on Twitter at LogicAppsIO. So with that, I think that's all I had for my session today. And as always, it is very exciting to present in front of this audience, primarily because because of all the experience that you bring in and all the feedback that you bring in that helps us to improve what we offer and provides us a validation that what we are doing makes sense and we are building the right products and solutions.
Covey.co